ngayon, tinitry natin on YouTube, Facebook. Kung meron nang kaya na sa Twitter, gawin din natin bago mag-take over si Elon Musk. Alright, mga kameta, kamusta kayo? Whatever camp you belong to, whether ka Camping, whether ka Uniteam, ka GMRC, ka Isco, ka Pacman, ka Antman, lahat yan. This is where you're gonna get proper analysis na medyo may pa-cute effect. Alright, okay. Yan ang hindi nyo makuha sa ibang vloggers. Ibang vloggers parang, okay na, mabait na ako. Ayusin na natin yan. Ito. So, kung nakita niyo guys, meron tayong two articles na lumabas today. Yung isa sa Philippine Daily Inquirer, yung aking column, kung saan pinag-usapan po natin yung yung Pink Tide 2.0 ng Latin America and what Leni and the opposition can learn from that, including dyan yung Pink Movement. Yung isa pa po ay kakalabas lang sa Nikkei Asia. So ito pa yung parent company of Financial Times. So it's now in Tokyo. So this is a more an economics book. Economics column kung saan ina-argue ko how can Bongbong Marcos get the economics right by getting the politics right. Because if there's one thing that we learned under President Duterte is that even if you put the best technocrats there, kung bara-bara yung politika mo, kung maraming EJKs, kung kapalpakan yung managerial skills, etc., the economy will suffer. That's why in 2017, base sa mga reports na meron tayo, up to 90% yung drop sa foreign investments because of concerns with rule of law in the Philippines amid all these EJK reports. The other one is also to keep in mind nung nagkaroon ng pandemya, ayun, mayabang na sila ngayon. Pero nung panahon ng pandemya, kasagsagan ng pandemya, Philippines was among the worst performing on earth, right? Especially in region. And our economic growth, actually, our contraction was almost 10%. So along with India, one of the worst in the world. And base sa IMF data, Philippines is among the worst affected countries economically. So yes, may growth tayo ngayon, pero we're bouncing from a very low base. So hindi pa tayo nag-fully recover, guys. Alright? So huwag kayong magpadala dun sa mga blogger, blah na yan. Alright, so if you have bad politics, even if you got the best technocrats, may limitasyon pa rin mga yan, di ba? Parang sa filter yan, guys. Parang sa filter sa camera. May limitasyon pa ang filter. Okay, that sounded mean. But you get what I'm saying? Kung talagang warag yung antok na hindi ka natulog, kahit anong filter ang gagawin mo, lalabas pa rin. Ako naman, wala naman ako insecurities. I mean, you can see my airbags, everything, no problem. Sige, go ahead. Kantsawan nyo ako. Alright? Okay. Now, so before puntahan ko yung issue ng Nikkei Asia, actually, I was hoping na sana naman by now, guys, meron na tayong mga DFA secretary, meron na tayong DND secretary, meron na tayong Department of Health secretary, meron na tayong National Security Advisor, ang dami pang mga key positions na natitira na hindi pa naayos. Ilan weeks na lang, guys? 2 weeks na lang, 3 weeks na lang, mag-inaugurate na si Bongbong Marcos. Anong petsa na? Okay, so I was hoping we'll have the foreign policy and DND portfolios clarified, including National Security Advisor, para pag-usapan natin itong foreign policy ni Tatay Digong and how we can transition out of this. For people who have read me, my books, my works, etc., hindi lang yung mga alaskador natin dito online, you would know that I have a very nuanced take. I think there are certain things that President Duterte got right, at least his administration. There are certain things they didn't get right. And therefore, siguro pwede pumasok si Marcos dyan at ayusin yan, diba? So, yun yung gusto natin pag-usapan ng mabuti, ng maayos. Okay, Miko nakikita ko na yung comments ngayon. Sige, umayos ka. Isa pang insulto. Actually, you know what? I have a new rule. Isang insult, you're out. So, let me memorize your name. Miko Domingo. Alright, balikan kita mamaya. Block ka na. Umayos ka. Alright? Bawal ang bastos dito sa atin. Alright? Gusto mo matroll, punta ka dun sa kabila, yung mga ma-certify or hindi ma-certify, bahala na kung sino ma-certify ni dyan, alright? Wag kayong umayos kayo dito, nakikita ko na yung comments, nag-reset na ako ng FB ko, wala kayong takas, kitang-kita ko live, ha? Ulitin ko, ha? Anong pangalan mo ulit? Balikan kita, ha? You don't mess with me. Alright, so actually I was hoping to properly analyze itong foreign and defense policy portfolio and also national security advisor. Again, I've been told that Clarita Carlos, my former professor, could be up for national security advisor if hindi niya makuha yung DFA secretary. I mean, my sense is talagang para sa kanya yung DFA secretary, dapat binigay na sa kanya by this time. So maybe national security advisor is really more likely. But you never know. I already knew that Trixie was one of the top candidates to be press secretary. Eventually, she also became that. So let's see, let's see. Let's see saan tayo pupunta yan. Mamaya na, hayaan nyo na yung Miko Domingo na yun. Fake naman yata yung account niya. At kung hindi fake, well, kasalanan mo, bastos ka eh. Umayos ka dito, alright? Alright, Meta 1 to ha. Malakas pa yung kape ko ngayon kahit 3-in-1 lang, okay? You don't mess with me in my Meta 1. Medyo iba yung energy level dito. Medyo Meta 2-3, mas mabait na ako. Pero Meta 1 ha, maaga pang araw. Ito yung before sunset natin. Umayos kayo, ha? Umayos kayo. Alright. So, pag-usapan natin today, before tayo pupunta sa mga iba't ibang issue, tsaka yung mga tanong nyo, guys. In fairness, alam ko marami kayong tanong sa akin. So, balikan ko yung mga tanong nyo. Nako po, marami tayong mga tanong dyan. I-discuss po natin yan. One second. Let me first go to my key point and then I'll go to your questions. No? I think abot na tayo ng almost 1,000 questions since the other day. Alright? So, let's see what we can do. No, anyway, ang point ko naman dito is if ikaw ang supporter ni Leni or Pink Movement or whatever, I think this is a time na hindi lang... this is a time whereby the best way to move on for you is to think about what strategy you should adopt in the coming years para lumakas itong opposition or may pag-asa itong opposition. And kung ikaw ay supporters naman ng kabilang camp or mga ibang camp, guys, you want to have a strong opposition para naman tayo matino tayong demokrasya. Hindi a destructive politics, pero yung may balance naman kahit papano, wala naman perfectong administrasyon. So you need also some sort of alternative para hindi tayo stuck sa isa lang. In fact, may magandang comment yung isang kasama natin dito, sabi niya, ang plano ng mga, ito yung sinasabi ko, this is the worst cancel culture. Worse than yung mga pa-woke na cancel culture is yung style na hindi ka lang agree sa kanila sa mga alamano style nila. So, sabi nila bias ka, sabi nila bayaran ka, sabi nila ano ka. Alam yun mga ganun. That's also cancel. Red tag ka pa, walang iya. So anong gusto niyo mangyari? Magkaroon kayo ng sariling buong bansa, maging echo chamber niyo ng gets niyo? Hindi, that's not a democracy na, guys. Yung Kim Jong-un style na yan. Mag-North Korea na lang kayo or mag-China na lang kayo kung yan gusto niyo mangyari. Demokrasya naman sana tayo, di ba? So don't force your opinion on others. And just because may disagreement tayo doesn't mean na bias ka, blah 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 ka. Tapos magrereklamo kayo na kina-cancel culture kayo. Kayo na nga napaka di ba? Ang babastos pa ng mga comments. Andyan na ba si yung kinall out natin kanina? Walang ya. Umayos kayo ha, umayos kayo. Meta 1 to, babalikan kita talaga. Okay. Etong ito. Alright. So pag-usapan natin itong, this is my column today. So pinost ko kanina, paki-check ulit. Tomorrow, hopefully may mga clarity na tayo sa DND and DFA, etc. Pwede natin balikan. If not, pag-usapan natin Marcosnomics. Alright? So, I touched on that in a number of pieces, including yung piece ko today on Nikkei Asia. Please guys, check na yan. Yung Nikkei Asia pala, kasi may may bayad yata yan. Pwede nyo i-check ng libre yan. Pag sa Google Chrome or ibang browser yata. Or kung yung first nyo, libre lang yan. So, don't worry about the paywall. There's another strategy. Alam kong parang pwede mo ilagay sa Twitter tapos i-read mode mo. Anyway, basahin nyo yan, alright? Para makita niya, I'm fair, di ba? Ang sinasabi ko naman dito is, I think Bongbong Marcos can do well if he corrects some of the mistakes of Tatay Digong and then improves on that. And then at the same time, of course, also deal with some of the concerns with good governance, potential under his administration. Okay, so I'm being fair. Yung sinasabi na give a chance, I don't know what that means. But in my case, I give my unsolicited advice and hopefully nababasa nila. And Nikkei Asia is one of the biggest publications on earth, right? So, sana naman, di ba? Chine-check ng iba dyan. Now, anyway, okay, let's have some honest conversation here, guys, before I go into yung mga question, answer, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Last month was really, really stressful, to be honest. Hindi lang ako na-stress dun sa grabe yung schedule, 7 a.m. to 5 a.m. the next day, tapos 11 a.m. Then, hindi lang yun, or checking all the papers, but also in the fact that I realized there are a lot of people na hindi maka-move on dahil either in denial sila, either they're trying to blame others, they're trying to blame voters, they're just trying to blame disinformation. Medyo may pagka-toxic na yung situation. I completely understand. Grieving, frustration, I completely understand. You have all the right. But there's a healthier way of approaching these kinds of situations. And one of them is to have proper understanding, especially comparative understanding of politics. Para makikita mo na you're not alone in the world. At may mga iba dyan around the world who have been through the same situation and maybe they came out of it. May pagkaano to eh, kumbaga, parang self-help politics ang tawag ko dito. Ay, gusto ko yan. Parang, kumbaga kung may self-help sa career, may self-help politics din. And one way to do that is, pag-aralan mo yung mga similar countries, na similar yung problema, similar yung social ills, similar yung mga crisis problema, pero they were still able to find or chart their way out of the tunnel or see at least the light at the end of the tunnel. Kaya nga, ang sinabi ko dito sa column ko, Pink Tide 2.0. I'm not talking about pink movement. I'm talking about Latin America's Pink Tide 2.0 and what are the lessons for Leni and the opposition. Ang argument ko talaga dito is, one thing I found particularly frustrating was the torrent of denialism among opposition supporters who vaguely blame it all on disinformation, if not directly the voters themselves. Many expressed their wish to even migrate, while others dismissed the result as pure fraud. Okay, gets ko yung frustration. The good news, though, is that proper political understanding anchored in comparative analysis is not only therapeutic, but also potentially transformative in terms of charting the way forward. And this is where gusto kong pag-aralin Latin America. To be honest, we have more in common with Latin America than Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand. Their building history, their culture, religious background is completely different from us. While kung tinignan mo, ang Latin American countries, a lot of them are so similar to the Philippines. And do not forget, the Philippines was ruled by Spain via Mexico for a very long time. Some of the words that we use actually, they come from Mexico. No? Nueva España before. So, we have a lot in common with them, especially if you look at the structure of our nation state, and if you look at the problems that we're facing. So these are the social ills that I'm talking about. At the same time, like Latin American countries, we have also tried to become more democratic countries, but we have failed on so many levels, and yet we share same lofty aspiration. Nonetheless, this is where the big difference comes in. Okay, before I go to the big difference, let me talk about also the issue of disinformation. So marami nagsasabi na, sila kasi wala silang disinformation, tayo meron, like, are you even researching? Nag-aaral ka ba? Kasi kung tinignan mo yung datos, sorry, okay, I don't wanna be mean. Ito tignan mo tong status, So kung tignan mo yung 2017 Ipsos Perils of Perception, alright? Ito yung survey ng mga bansa base dun sa assessment that whether the average voter or adult has informed opinion on key political and social issues. Now, guess ano yung ranking ng Philippines in the world base dito? Alright? Okay. Ano sa tingin mo? Okay, ito. Ayan tayo. So, kung titignan mo itong ranking na to, ang Pilipinas po, so, this is a survey of whether average adults in the country are well informed about key political issues. So, ang tawag dyan is misperception index. Now, the number one country in the world in terms of informed yung mga voters and adults nila on key issues is, you can guess, these are the usual suspects. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, but the number 4 is interesting. It's actually España, right? Which used to be a very third world style country under General Franco up until 70s, 80s, mahirap ng España, but yes, nakaabol sila. And for some of you who have been to Spain, you'll know how progressive they are, no, including their government right now, no. And then you have a whole usual suspects, no. Now, dun sa bottom, pinaka sa ilalim ng ito yung mga bansa meron dyan. Mexico, so in order, Mexico, Colombia, Indonesia, India, Peru, Pilipinas, Brazil, South Africa. Ito po yung lahat ng mga kulelat na bansa kung saan meron yung tinatawag na, you should know this psychological term. What do you call it when someone, classroom, what do you call it when someone is very confident about an issue but actually he's very ignorante din siya about that issue? You know the term? Okay, I'm just trying to get. So, ang term dyan is Dunning-Kruger effect. Alright? Dunning-Kruger effect. Ano ibig sabihin yan? Ito yung situation kung saan the higher your certainty about that issue, this is also a situation where wala ka ring alam sa issue na yan. Right? So, it's a cognitive bias. Naalala niyo yung System 1, System 2, yung mga ina-analyze ko. So, Dunning-Kruger effect, which comes from the name of, you can guess, David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999. So, mga psychologists to, mga behavioral scientists. This is a situation whereby people with low ability sa isang task overestimate their ability. So much so that what happens here is that the lower the information, the higher confidence. So for instance, tinanong mo mga ordinary people, ano sa tingin mo ang sitwasyon natin ng law and order? Yung mga pinaka-misinformed, yan ang pinaka-confident anong alam nila dun sa sitwasyon ng law and order. So for instance, akala nila ang Pilipinas ay narco-state na. Yung pala, hindi pala, pag tinignan mo yung data. Pero yung mga naniniwala narco-state tayo, yan ang pinaka-mali. Yan ang pinaka hindi alam yung information. Habang yung mga iba na more skeptical and we're not very sure, they tended to be actually more better informed. So ang tawag dyan, healthy or informed skepticism. So Dunning-Kruger effect is a situation whereby the higher the ignorance, the higher the certainty. Or rather, the lower the information level, the higher the certainty. Yung mga, ay, pag ganito tayo, ganito ang mangyari. Pag ganito, alam nyo na sino yan. Alam nyo na sino yan. Alright, yan. That's a classic case of cognitive bias of Dunning-Kruger effect. So, ang Pilipinas pa is at the bottom of the list, along with countries like Brazil, Peru, Mexico, Colombia, India, Indonesia, and South Africa was actually the worst. So yan. So obviously, where's this misperception coming from? It's coming from disinformation and misinformation. Misinformation is when people are spreading knowledge, but it's unverified knowledge. Disinformation, so ito there's also a difference between disinformation and misinformation. So disinformation is deliberate spreading of fake news. Right? So misinformation is like, feeling mo marami kang alam, nag-Dunning-Kruger effect ka, share ka ng share, yung pala, hindi accurate, hindi na double check. That's Dunning-Kruger effect. Disinformation is, ayan na, farm levels, mga ganon, alam nyo na this, alam na this. Alright? So if you look at it, the countries whereby there was a lower level of certainty but healthy skepticism scored higher. Sweden, Norway, Denmark. All of them Scandinavian country, all of them social democratic country in so many levels. Habang yung mga bansa na highly unequal, a lot of them Latin American, Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, and then kasama din dyan yung Pilipinas, along with Indonesia, India, and South Africa. Ito yung napakalaki yung problema sa Dunning-Kruger effect. No? So this is a survey by Ipsos. So you can check yung mga follow-up studies na ginawa nila. I can send it to you guys para makita nyo yung nangyari. So this is a serious problem we have with cognitive bias. So clearly, we have issues with misperception, misinformation, disinformation, and Brazil is actually worse than the Philippines. Peru is almost at the same level as us. And yet, okay, you want to talk about basic education? Guess what? So let's look at another indicator to look at how Latin America is actually similar to us. So for instance, there was one study. This is yung study ng math and science literacy, di ba? Among developing countries. This was an OECD studies, all right? Okay, pakita ko sa inyo. Kung saan up to 80 countries were assessed in terms of their basic literacy, ability to read, write, understand, reading comprehension, at saka math and sciences. Now, nagkulelat ng Philippines totally dun sa isa, pero sa math and sciences, dun lang tayo hindi nagkulelat. Pero mas mataas tayo at least sa isang Latin American country, no? I think this was, if I'm not mistaken, was it Dominican Republic? Or El Salvador? Let me double check that. So if you look at it, the problem of weak basic education is actually common. So this is the study, no? The PISA study, the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA, right? So it's a survey of yung mga bata to assess yung basic education. Ang Pilipinas nagkulelat talaga in the world, but at least in one category, I think this was in math and sciences, may natalo tayo, at yun pa, Latin American. Pero yung mga ibang Asian countries, talagang talong-talo tayo. I think Vietnam, na napakamahirap na bansa, nag-top 10 pa sila eh. Alright. So yeah, ito to, Dominican Republic. So it was only in one category na natalo natin yung ibang bansa, at least hindi super dead last. That was in mathematics and sciences, and natalo lang natin yung Dominican Republic, right? So if you look at it, Asian, Western countries, all of them very, very highly ranked. And the ones at the top are the usuals: Korea, China, Vietnam, and then some of the countries. So, ito grabe. So, ito yung survey, So, ito yung survey. I know you're not gonna see it well, but I'm just trying to show you that everything we say is based on data. So, you see the rankings here? Yung pinaka-bottom dito, that's Philippines and Dominican Republic. Ito yung ranking sa Math and Sciences. Mas mababa tayo, pinakamababa tayo. So, and then you look at the ranks of other countries, hindi lang Latin America. So here you see Panama, and then you see Brazil, Colombia. So if you look at it, a lot of Latin American, Uruguay, Mexico. So look at it. This is where all the Latin American countries are, at the lower level. Hindi sila nandito. Most Asian countries are here. Guess sino mga kasama natin? Itong mga Latinos. Here at the bottom, right? So, if you want to use this issue of disinformation, education, etc., hello, itong mga Latino ka-level natin, no? Laki ng problema pagdating sa basic education, di ba? And this is fascinating. I think for the first time sinama nilang Vietnam, nag-top 10 ang Vietnam, at least dun sa isang category. I think that was category of Math and Sciences. I mean, wow. And Vietnam is actually, Vietnam was poorer than the Philippines in per capita income when this survey was done. If I'm not mistaken, when is this, 2018? So last year lang yata na ano tayo ng Vietnam in per capita income. So, I mean, this tells you how serious the problem of basic education crisis in the Philippines is. And yung mga level natin, a lot of them are Latin American countries. So I'll show you that survey. Alright, everything I'll post, don't worry. So, kaya nga, hindi tayo nagmamarites tayo. Matinong pag-aaral pong ginagawa natin. Meron talaga tayong krisis pagdating sa ating education system. Alright? So, top countries were, areas were Hong Kong, Macau, China, Korea, Japan, Chinese Taipei. Ayan, the usual suspects, ang mga pinakamataas dito. Diba? Ibang klase. Yung Vietnam talaga, grabe impressive talaga yung Vietnam. Yeah. Alright, oh yeah. The usual stuff. Japan, Korea, yeah. And then, of course, yung mga rich na Western countries. US, so-so lang yung US. Actually, hindi ganun kataas ng US. Mas mataas pa yung mga ibang Asian countries and European countries. Alright? So here you can see the data. In fairness, Portugal, medyo mataas, no? They're dun sa upper quadrants na sila. So, again, so if you look at it, misinformation problem were very similar. Dun sa mga, are very similar. Ano sinasabi mo dyan, Marcos Aquino? Obviously, fake yung account mo. Huwag kang mag-spread ng fake news dito, ha? Huwag kang magwala-wala dito. Don't post nonsense here, okay? Umalis ka dito. Pakiyan yan. Yeah. Alright. You see, guys, we're talking about real studies here and data. If we don't have a capacity for understanding basic real studies at gusto mo lang mga bardagulan at kalokohan, umalis ka dito. We don't need you. Alright? Okay. So, I'll post that to you. So, what am I saying here? Based on data, it's very, very clear na ang Pilipinas has more in common with Latin American countries in terms of misinformation, basic education crisis, than a lot of our neighbors. Vietnam, Korea, Taiwan, they're all top 10 in the world. Ang Pilipinas bottom, like between rank 70 to 80. Do you get what I'm saying? Those are facts. I'm sorry to say. Not to mention our religious, cultural background, our Hispanic colonial background. Goodness, mga ano natin, mga forefathers natin were writing in Spanish, Rizal among others, di ba? So if you look at it, we have much more in common with these countries, also in terms of income inequality, Codillo politics, yung tatay style politics, that's very Latino also, Codillo style. So yon. In short, I believe Latin American countries are more, of course, Latin America is very broad area, duh. But on an average Latin American country is much more similar to the Philippines than an average Asian country. Do you get what I'm saying? When you get average attributes in terms of rankings, attributes of state, industrial trade policy, much more similar tayo. Kaya don't be fooled by the fact na may mga Latino, iba yung itsura nila sa atin. Or maybe not me, I kinda can pass. No, I do pass. But, wag tayo magpaloko dyan. Don't be fooled by face value, alright? You look at the attributes of their society, political economy, inequality levels, crisis. We can look at Gini coefficient with measures inequality, etc. And yet, this is how you identify causality. If your causality is that disinformation and education is the reason why, blah, 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 why Latin America, despite having very similar problems like us, why, nonetheless, they elect a lot of progressive leftist leaders? Why? So that's the question that we have to study carefully. Right? The names are very clear. So I'll go with the list, no? So in the past year, voters in both Peru, Pedro Castillo, and Chile, Gabriel Boric, voted for former activists who managed to defeat either the Scions, Keiko Fujimori in the case of Peru, or partisans, Jose Antonio Cast of former dictators. I mean, Cast in the case of Pinochet. More recently, Gustavo Petro, a former guerrilla fighter, guerrilla fighter, dominated the first round of presidential elections in Colombia with more than 40% of the votes, comfortably beating traditional politicians such as Federico Gutierrez. Right? Oh, may Gutierrez sila, may Gutierrez din tayo. In Brazil, former President Luis Inacio Lula da Silva, a longtime labor union leader, is a favorite to beat the incumbent foreign populist Jair Bolsonaro in elections later this year. Siyempre, cross-finger yung iba. In the past, we had more radical versions, not necessarily fan of them. So, kaya nga sabi ko, Pink Tide 2.0. We had even more aggressive, radical versions, a little bit too radical perhaps for my taste. But we're talking about people like, on the softer side, Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, AMLO, Bolivian President Evo Morales, Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa. So, we're talking, and then, of course, and then, super extreme na, alam niyo, Venezuela na yan, di ba? So, no, ayaw natin ng ganyan. But if you look at the more recent ones, Pink Tide 2.0, they're progressive, but at the same time, not too radical. They are, and at the same time, a lot of them, former activists, former guerrilla fighter, etc. But a lot of them were able to also establish themselves successfully once they were elected into offices, whether mayor, senator, deputy, etc., etc. So clearly, guys, you cannot explain it all by just looking at this information and education. Because Latin Americans have very similar problems to us, and yet, their pinks are doing much better, right? So this is where the young pink movement in the Philippines, the Todos, Bibo, Toddler, can learn something from the pink tide, Kuya Pink ng mga Latino, right? So if you look at it, in fact, interestingly, according to writer Anthony Ocampo, nasa America yan meron siyang libro, Tayo Daw Yung Latinos of Asia. Now, Benedict Anderson, one of the greatest political scientists ever, right, wrote that the Philippine Revolution was a continuation of the Bolivarian revolts. This is not my quote. This is my writing. That rocked Spanish colonies in the mid-19th century. No, so in fact, for Benedict Anderson, yung ating Katipunan Revolution was the last Latino anti-colonial revolt, along with that of Cuba, right? So we're really related to these countries, and Bonifacio would not have launched that revolution against Spain had it not been for Spain being bogged down in Cuba. So our history is very tied to Latin America. Anyone who ignores us, you don't know what we're talking about, right? Mag-aral kayo dyan, right? So there are clearly lessons here for Leni and the peak movement, etc. And let me discuss that very briefly, right? So the lessons for liberal opposition in the Philippines are clear. May isang feeling dyan na sabi niya, jibber-jabber yung sinasabi ko. Ito yung mga abogado na walang alam sa social science, ang yabang-yabang magsalita. No offense sa mga ibang abogado. I'm just talking about yung mga iba dyan. You may be a decent abogado, but if you don't know anything about social science, wag ka na Latin American progressive leaders. First of all, they were able to rise through the ranks and establish themselves as credible, fiery, and transformative local government leaders and legislators. The person who comes to my mind the easiest is Vico Soto, right? He's moving through the ranks. At the lower level, he's proving himself, and then he can move up. You can also look at the cases like Riza Ontiveros, right? Despite all odds, she became the only true opposition who won even in these elections. So after all the losses and all, still she was able to win, no? All right. Ayan na yung isa. Si Marcos Aquino, ang source daw niya, Wikipedia. Wow, ang galing mo ha. Balikan kita mamaya. Huwag ka magsalita ng ano dyan. Mamaya ka na mag-Wikipedia, mag-research ka na mabuti. Alright. So crucially, Latin American progressives candidates embraced what? Okay guys, so keep this in mind. There's a term for this. I got this term from Chantal Mouffe. She's a Belgian-French political scientist. She calls this agonistic democracy. What you need is, in short, fuego. palaban, fuego, and progressive, even a little bit radical kind of liberal democratic campaign. So namely a full commitment to challenge an oppressive social order through transformational policies. Hindi yung mga pahapyaw-hapyaw na reforma. Hindi yung mga half-baked, half-hearted liberal reforms. No, transformational policies. So for instance, if you look at the case of Pedro, he might win, he might not win, but he won the first round at least in Colombia. For instance, he's pushing for significant realignment of the budget of the country. He's an economist by training also, by the way, and also a senator. So in the case of Gustavo Pedro, he's pushing for radical reorientation of the country's budgetary priorities towards health and education. And he wants to increase the taxes significantly on the rich people and the richest of rich, and then bring down yung taxes on the poorest people. That is transformational policy. Not yung mga pahapyaw na pakyut lang. Right? So this is what we call agonistic democratic struggle. And ang sinasabi ni Chantal Mouffe, I really like her argument, is that kalaban mo populist, be also a populist, but a progressive populist. You cannot beat populists by pahapyaw-hapyaw na liberalism. You can only beat the far-right populists by being being a progressive and fiery, agonistic populist. You fight fire with fuego. That's how you do it. Yan ang sinasabi ni Chantal Mouffe. Alright? So please, pag-aralan yan. And if you look at it, these are of course charismatic leaders who display true leadership by effectively mobilizing popular, quote, passions toward promotion of democratic designs, and kept democratic contestation alive by sustained and full-scale mobilization of the civil society beyond election cycles. Hindi pwede na mag-grand rallies and movement ka lang nung patapos na yung eleksyon. At hindi pwede mag-mobilize ka lang during election. This has to be sustained at a full scale before, during, and after elections. It has to be a long-term approach. So all of these successful politicians I talk about, hindi sila biglang naging progressive nung last 2 months ng elections. Hindi sila umasa sa mga artista na mag-endorse sa kanila or maglabasan ng mga volunteers nila in the last 2 months. No! They had movements behind them for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 100 years, right? So these were sustained full-scale mobilization of the civil society beyond election cycles, not only for election cycles. And most importantly, so this is the closing part, none of them settled for half-hearted reforms or tired liberal cliches, yung paulit-ulit na mga gas-gas na narratives and music and whatever from the past that no longer is appealing to people, not only on TikTok but even on more mainstream platforms. They succeeded because they offered nothing short of transformation reform in a broken political system. That is why, compadrino, listen to me. That is why, even if Latin America has disinformation problems like us, I showed you the survey, the Ipsos survey. Even their educational system is very problematic like us. I showed you the PISA survey. Still, their progressive candidates were able to be successful and to win. So clearly, may kulang, may kailangan ayusin. And kaya sabi ko, if the opposition wants to have a future, they have to study yung mga successful peers around the world. And hindi pwedeng pahapyaw-hapyaw na liberalismo or mga half-hearted reforms, etc. You have to go fuego. And that is why if you look at it, Vico Soto, Riza Ontiveros, these are, among many people, are closest to what we're looking at as far as the successful models in Latin America are concerned. You cannot replicate it overnight, but you can learn some lessons, tweak things, and work on it for the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Alright? In short, hindi mo pwede 11th hour lahat. You have to be decisive. You have to be sustained in your approach. Alright? Maraming salamat, guys. Okay. May mga tanong ba kayo dyan? Ayan na, marami na magalit sa akin. Ayan, uy, medyo kumunti yung mga natin dyan. Mga trolls natin dyan. Alright, so we have to be really, really serious about this, guys. So, eto lang so this is the unsolicited advice. So today I gave unsolicited advice to two camps. The Marcos camp on how to get the economics right, but I'll discuss that more tomorrow. And then also to the camp of the opposition, I gave an unsolicited advice on how they can reinvent themselves and move forward. Kaysa mag-depress and all, there's a way forward. Wala tayong time to be depressed. These are really challenging times. We have to get things together. Alright? Okay, may mga tanong ba kayo dyan, guys? Ayan, mga friends natin dyan sa YouTube. Mga friends natin dyan sa TikTok. Mga friends natin dyan sa IG. Mga friends natin dyan sa LinkedIn. Mga friends natin dyan. Nagpipiling na naman. Ayan na naman tayo. Ayan na naman tayo. Alright, ayan. Thank you very much. Okay, wait lang. Paano ko ma-check? How can I check? Oh, sorry sa mga, sorry sa mga YouTube, sa mga friends natin dyan sa YouTube. I had to sacrifice you for a few seconds. Sorry. Just to check yung may mga, kulang kasi ako eh. I think I have to, may budget tayo. Bili pa ako ng isa pang phone screen dito sa lagay natin. Okay, okay. Okay. Gets ko na. Sige. Mag-isip ako ng paraan. Okay, don't worry guys. At least, masaya ako. Naayos natin ito. So nakikita ko na yung comments na ngayon. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much guys. Alright. May tanong ba kayo dyan? So thank you again sa mga friends natin, sumasali sa atin from around the world. California friends, are you awake? Are you there? I think it's just, what time is it? 2 a.m., 3 a.m. now? For friends in Toronto, in Vancouver, in Europe, gitnang silangan. You love na yung Konya style. Gitnang silangan. Salangan. Thank you guys for watching my dad's vlogs. Yung mga ganun style. Alam niyo na sino yan. Antman style. Thank you din sa mga friends natin dyan from Cruz na Ligas. Yan. Mga friends natin dyan sa QC. Yung mga katabi natin dyan, yung mga tambay sa kanto. Minsan, random people lang. Biglang, uy, Kameta, ikaw pala yung vlogger, di ba? Uy, hindi ako yan, ha? Hindi ako yan. Hindi ako yan. Ayan na. Uy, hindi ako yan, ha? Pero pag mabait, ay, hindi ako yan. Pag hindi mabait, ay, hindi ako yan. Si anong Meta? Anong yung Meta? Hindi ko alam yan. Hindi ba yung company Zuckerberg? Yan. Ayan dyan. Ayan na tayo eh. Ayan. Good afternoon daw, sabi ni Piolo Pascual. Saan galing yan? Nagpa-fake news na naman tayo dyan. Hello, yung mga friends pala natin from Australia. So, Faye, Santos, Jerome is joining us from Melbourne, Australia. Hi, mates. Yan, medyo maaga ngayon, at least medyo 8 p.m.-ish na kayo sa New South Wales. Friends natin dyan from Perth. Hindi yung ex natin dyan, yung Perth. Ano ka kayo dyan? Mga friends natin dyan sa Brisbane. Queensland friends! Brisbane! Yay! Si Katski, thank you very much for joining us. Ayan, si Christian Javila. Thank you for your star and support. Thank you kay Mark Corpus for joining us. May tanong siya about yung mga science and technology expenditure. Ay, mahabang usapan yan. Let's talk about that more in detail. Thank you kay Matt for stars and support. New Jersey naman daw si Tess. New Jersey. Kamusta yung senatorial race niyo doon? Di ba may Republican out of nowhere na challenge yung Democrat? Muntik pa nanalo yata. Dami mga... Yan, si Lotzi joining us from Perth. Uy, baka naman. Hindi. Sabi naman, Jong, may tanong siya about Jokno statement. Ano to? Yung kay Karen Davila. Ako, mahirap magsalita ngayon sa... Mamaya, mag-statement na naman ng Department of Finance sa akin. Ayoko na magsalita. Mamaya na. Pag-usapan ko na mabuting... Marcosnomics. Pag-usapan natin yan. Si Ben Jokno, pro na yan. Under ERAP, Duterte, and Marcos Jr. Ibang klase yan. This is a technocrat who can work with these types. Yeah. Doon naman sa K-12, nako. Balik na daw sa K-10. Now, I know yung mga parents gusto nila K-10 na lang kaysa K-12. I understand. But man, the reason we had K-12 is para mag-align tayo dun sa mga world standard. Kasi pag kinompress mo yan sa 10 years, eto na nga, may crisis na nga tayo sa basic education. Kakompress mo pa lalo, di lalong bababa yung level of kalidad na education natin. Yan na kasi problema sa Pilipinas, walang follow-through. Parating reinventing the same wheel. Right? Yun na problema sa mga federal parliamentary. Akala nila, sulat mo lang sa papel, maayos na lahat. Ay, palitan natin yung sinulat sa papel, okay na tayo. Like, it's more complicated than, it's institution building, it's bureaucratic capacity building. It's complicated, right? It's path dependency. Institutional reform. Ayan, watching from New York City. Mga kaibigan natin dyan. Si Orland, joining us from... Oy, Bonsai Beach! Sydney! Grabe yung Bondi Beach. Lahat may abs doon. Excited pa naman ako dun sa Bondi Beach. Nakaano ako, mga muscle shirt. Tapos, I don't know. Why, swing na tayo. Siguro puro mga thorn nandun. Kaya kailangan natin malakas din. So, push up ako. Push up. 10 push up. Yung kasama ko ng Pinoy. Tapos ka na, bro. Wait lang, isa pa. Push up. So, medyo labas yung tricep, biceps. Pagpasok ko doon, grabe. Lahat may abs doon. Lahat ng tao may abs. Lahat, grabe. Parang na-insecure ako sa sarili ko. Bigla. Di na ako babalik dito. Next time, magbalik ko, kailangan mo na yata mag-steroids para makahabol ka, di ba? Tapos lahat sila tan, yung gano'n nila. Tapos nakakatakot pa naman yung sun sa Australia. Wala na yung ozone layer nila, di ba? Parang, oh, scary, man. Lahat sila tan. Parang ano to, Ipanema Beach. Grabe. I didn't expect that, man. Too much. Is that true, Orlan? Is it still true? Yung ganyan situation, yung lahat may abs doon? Tsaka yung ano yung man beach, ano yung isa pang man beach, yung isa pa doon sa Sydney. Alright. Ayan. Uy, sabi naman ni Kate, paraffle mo books. Marating mo sa libro ko. Hindi ko pinaparaffle yan. Diyan yung pusa ka, andyan yung aking pagmamahal. May mga highlights pa yan. Sisismisan nyo pa yung ayan, Gold Coast sa Brisbane yan, di ba? Medyo yung sa labas ng sa labas ng Brisbane, di ba? Yan, nung nag-visit ako ng UQ, nakita ko may train na papuntang Gold Coast. Yung Gold Coast may pagka-Miami siya eh. Siya lang siyang social. I'm ordinary because I cannot make you more social. Alright. Yeah, Bondi Beach. Everyone is tan. Nice boy. Parang, whoa, na-challenge ako. Yeah, Manly Beach. Yeah, Manly Beach. Yeah, alam mo yung kwento yun. Tama, Orlan. Yes, mates. Manly Beach. That's true. Tama, Sarah. Ayan. Okay, may tanong ba kayo dyan? Ayan na, let's break na tayo. I have to go. May interview pa ako sa CNN Philippines, etc. So, habol ko pa yan. Tsaka may interview sa ibang channels, etc. So, let's see. Not to mention yung ibang trabaho ko. So, thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Ayan, yung mga friends natin dyan. Kamusta kayo dyan? Ayan na. Magagalit na sa akin. Oh, tama na. Magpakabait na kayo. Huwag na kayo mag-comment ng ano. Umayos kayo dyan. May mga friends natin from Victoria. Ba't puro mga Australians lang nagko-comment dito? Nasaan yung iba? Saan yung represent Barangay Cruz Nalikas, mga Barangay UP, mga Barangay Tondo, yung mga gano'n. Nasaan na? Oh, may pa tayong Adelaide, Australia. Yun, talagang tayo ngayon, strong tayo, Australian night tayo. You should have told me earlier, okay? Ayan tayo. Ayan, Marisa, your question is a bit deep. We have to address that properly dun sa issue ng please, by the way, dun sa issue ng bloggers versus journalists, kahapon, if you cut my back and forth episode with my good friend, vlogger friend, guru friend, Mark Gamboa, you'll see our discussion of that. And the episode will be out soon, yung edited version, pinalinis namin. So please watch that, alright, with Mark Gamboa, yung kaibigan natin, alright. Of course, kung kilala si Mark malapit kay Isko yan. So siya yung vlogger ni Isko noon, right? Ako naman, I'm friend with all sides. Char. Ayan tayo, pare. Okay, salamat po sa Dude Paratol, Chong Bro. Thank you very much. Thanks sa mga friends natin sa United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, friends natin from Doha, from Bahrain, from Persian Gulf, Khalij, yan. Friends natin from Espanya, Madrid. Dapat ganun. Pag Madrid, hindi siya Madrid. It's Madrid. May lift. Alright, thank you very much. And then friends din natin dito sa Pilipinas. Mindanao, friends natin sa Mindanao. Ito na may mga friends natin from Winnipeg. This is where Winnie the Pooh came from, right? Yung Winnipeg teddy bear. Yan. Thank you very much, friends natin dyan from Mindanao, Visayas, everywhere. You know? Wait lang, may nagpapa-shoutout sa akin kanina. Ma'am, basta shoutout sa inyo. Alam niyo na, sinagot ko na kayo kanina. Sorry na. Yan, friends natin from Malaysia, by the way. Thank you. So again, guys, yan. Yun ba, nagbibigay na ng kulang lang yung barangay number at saka plaka, postal code nandito na. Yan, friends natin from Primero, Malos, Bulacan. Yan, mga friends natin. Again, guys, thank you for your support, for your stars, for nice comments, for getting the trolls out. I know it. Kawawa may ibang trolls dito. Akala nila, pwede sila magkalat dito. Hindi nila alam, mga squadron lang dito. Tayo, guys, ang mga fuego. We're the Fuego activists. We fight for the good, but with style. Alright? We do it with style. We do Fuego, but with style. Ang tawag dyan, style with the heart. Alright? At hindi tayo mabait na pwedeng apihin na. Hindi nyo kami maapihan. Okay? Mas bully kami kung kailangan mag-bully. Alright? When the lion roars, alam niyo na. Okay? Once in a while, I'll roar, but kayo nang bahala sa mga hyena na iba dyan, ha? Ayan, friends natin dyan, si Bjorn Orgilep from Sultan Kudarat, si Mavic from Olongapo, yan, si Gianfranco from Bagong Lipunan, ng Krame QC. Uy, malapit lang tayo, what's up? Uy. Friends natin dyan from Ankara, yan, Teşekkür for joining us, brothers. My brothers. Turkish brothers. Yan. Friends natin dyan from Cagayan Valley. Uy, malapit na kayo sa Taiwan, di ba? Tama ba yan? Right. Nung nagpagutput kami, narinig ko na yung Taiwan eh. Oh. Ayan, friends natin dyan from, ano na yan? Kay Guapo, Muy Caliente. Okay, ayun naman. Later on, we'll talk about that. Gracias, senyora. Ayan, wag kami. Wag kami, guys. Wag kami. Yun lang masasabi ko. Eh. Friends natin from Zamboanga, si Mary Angels, joining us. Thank you very much for that. And from Marikina City, si Nori Cabalfin. And from Sorsogon naman, si Cielo. Thank you very much, Cielo, Agnes, for joining us. Ayan. From Cavite naman, si Madeline. Si Ann naman daw, Zadi. Zadi cool. Thank you naman for that. Tingnan naman natin sa kabula. Taiwan din kayo galing. Walang ya. Kayo, saan kayo galing? Ikaw. Ayan na naman tayo. Nag-alaskador na naman ako. Thank you from friends natin dyan from Cebu. From New Zealand. Yeah, Jacinda Arden. Nakauwi na si Jacinda. Yeah, Jacinda. From Agoncillo, Batangas. Si Elizabeth. Yeah. Zaddy with a heart. So, thank you very much, guys. Yan pag ako, talak mo. Thank you very much. Thank you sa TikTok. Thank you sa Twitter. Thank you sa YouTube. Thank you sa... Ayan, ganyan na tayo. Thank you. Ito yung mga fuego. Ganun ka. Tapos makabaliw yung mga tao. Tapos ganyan. Yan, tapos revolusyon. Alam niya na. You know the drill. Alam niya na this. Okay, gozaimasu, tomarigato, Jaina Serrano, Nandeskae. Okay, thank you. At saka kansamida din sa mga friends natin. Again, teşekkür sa friends natin in Turkey. Turkey. Let's get it correct, my friend. Turkey. Alright? Alright, okay. What's the version of khalas? Yeah, parang may ganun din khalas ng Turkish na parang sa mga Arabic, khalas. Yeah, parang ano yung khalas version ng mga Arabic, ng Turkish people? Meron silang version na parang khalas, parang okay na, vamos, let's go, parang ganun. For friends natin from Paris, Le Français, talagang social ang mga friends natin. Friends natin from Bringan City, yun. Thank you po for joining us. June Day, Wala bang mga friends natin dyan from Iloilo? From Batangas naman si Merlvic. Ayan na, may mga nag-ihanap na sa akin. Friends naman dyan, si Melis. Turkiya. Ayan na, si Turkiya friends natin, very active dito Tamam, right? That's the term in Turkish, tamam. Like, something is finished. Like, blah, 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 blah. Okay, tapos na ka, tamam, let's go. Parang ganon. Yan, that's their version of khalas. Parang Arabic khalas. Parang, tamam. Yan, see? I remember. Okay. Friends natin from Singapore. Is that the flag of Singapore, Shaali? Yeah, that's the flag of Singapore. All right. Muchas gracias. Señor, señora, todo. Suporta dapat kayo sa akin. All right? Dahil marami akong trolls at marami tayong mga alam nyo na this. Kaya tuloy-tuloy ang laban. Thank you kay Cheryl naman from Cebu. Please continue to support us. Yes, khalas in Arabic, tamam in Turkish and Persian, and like vamos in Espanol. Alright, let's go. Vamos. Fuego. Alright? God bless you. Thank you very much and talk to you soon. Kamusta na kayo dyan, mga friends natin sa YouTube? Ayan, sabay-sabay na tayo lahat. Alright. Check ko rin comments, so balikan kayo. 1 second.